"Ma'am, that badge does not open this gate." Sergeant Mark Lawson said it with the flat certainty of a man who had already decided the answer before checking the facts. The morning air outside Fort Redstone was cold enough to turn every breath pale, and the main gate was already alive with movement. Tactical vehicles rolled through the outer lane. Security lights blinked against the gray dawn. Radios cracked from clipped voices inside the guard post, each one carrying the pressure of a base preparing for Operation Night Harbor. Commander Emily Carter stood at the access counter without raising her voice. She was 33, white, with gray-blue eyes, dark blonde hair pulled into a regulation bun, and the quiet composure of someone who had learned that authority did not need to arrive loudly to be real. Her uniform was clean, precise, and unshowy. A sealed mission folder rested under one arm. Near her heart, a small silver eagle shield badge caught the first edge of sunrise, its polished wings held inside a thin shield, simple enough for an impatient guard to dismiss and distinct enough for anyone who knew its meaning to stop breathing for half a second. Lawson did not stop. He looked at the badge, then at her identification card, then back at the printed access sheet clipped to the counter. "You are not on my priority entry list," he said. "This gate is restricted until the mission commander arrives." Behind him, Private Daniel Ross shifted his weight and glanced toward the scanner. He was younger, less certain, and smart enough to feel that something in Emily's stillness did not match Lawson's assumption. "Sergeant," Ross said carefully, "we could run the card." Lawson lifted one hand without looking away from Emily. "Not yet." His eyes narrowed at the badge again. "We have had contractors, observers, and staff officers all morning trying to get through before clearance. A decorative badge is not clearance." A small silence settled over the counter. One of the guards inside the booth looked up from the monitor. A driver in the nearest vehicle leaned slightly toward his open window, hearing just enough to know there was trouble at Gate 1. Emily placed her identification card on the counter with 2 fingers, steady and exact. Then let the system decide. Lawson gave a short breath that almost became a laugh. "The system is for people with verified access." Emily's gaze did not move. "That is why you should use it." The radio inside the booth crackled before Lawson could answer. "Operations to Gate 1, confirm status. Command briefing is delayed. We are still waiting on the mission commander." The words hung in the cold air between them. Lawson's expression tightened, but pride made him slower than procedure. He looked past Emily toward the empty approach road, as if the person they were waiting for might appear in a larger vehicle, with a louder entrance, with a badge that matched his idea of command. Emily did not turn around. She only stood at the gate, calm beneath the rising sun, while the silver eagle shield badge rested over her heart like a truth the base had not yet been allowed to speak. Emily Carter had been stopped at gates before. Some guards had questioned her orders because the orders were sealed. Some had questioned her route because the route had changed without warning. Some had questioned her silence because they mistook calm for uncertainty. She never blamed a soldier for checking access. A gate existed to be guarded. A mission existed to be protected. But there was a line between procedure and pride, and Sergeant Mark Lawson had stepped over it the moment he decided the small badge near her heart was decoration before the system had been allowed to speak. Emily kept her hand resting beside her identification card on the counter, not pushing it forward, not pulling it back. The cold metal edge of the access window reflected the silver eagle shield badge on her chest, turning it into a small flash of light against the gray morning. Behind the gate, Fort Redstone moved with growing urgency. A convoy idled near the inner lane, engines low and steady. A communications specialist hurried across the walkway with a tablet pressed against his side. 2 officers outside the operations building looked toward Gate 1, then toward their watches, as if time itself had started asking questions. Inside the booth, Private Daniel Ross watched the scanner with the uncomfortable focus of a young soldier who understood that delay could become its own mistake. "Sergeant," he said again, quieter this time, "operations just called for the commander." Lawson's jaw tightened. "I heard them." He tapped the printed access sheet with one finger. "And I also see she is not on this priority list." Emily looked at the paper. It was yesterday's printout. The corner had curled from damp air, and the authorization column ended before the final mission update. She did not point that out like an insult. She simply said, "That list is not current." Lawson gave her a hard look. That is convenient. It is factual. The answer was calm enough to irritate him. He was used to people becoming defensive when challenged. Defensive people were easier to sort into categories. Emily did not offer him that convenience. She stood in front of the gate with controlled patience, sealed folder under her arm, uniform crisp, boots planted, eyes steady on the booth window. There was nothing dramatic in her posture, nothing theatrical in her expression, and that made Lawson trust it less. In his mind, someone important would arrive with an escort, a flagged vehicle, a call ahead, a visible rank that announced itself before the person spoke. Emily had arrived alone. That was the mistake he could not see himself making. The radio crackled again. Gate 1, Operations requests immediate confirmation. Mission Command Staff is assembled. Briefing cannot begin without Commander Carter. Private Ross looked sharply at Emily. The name had landed before the card had been scanned. Lawson went still for 1 second, but pride caught up fast. There are plenty of Carters in the system, he said, though his voice had lost some of its certainty. Emily picked up her identification card and placed it directly beneath the scanner slot. Then confirm which one I am. Ross reached for it, but Lawson stopped him with a glance that was more habit than judgment now. Emily did not move. The convoy engines hummed beyond the gate. The sun cleared the fence line and touched the silver eagle shield badge, making the small emblem shine brighter than anything else on her uniform for one brief, silent moment. Sergeant Mark Lawson had built his reputation on never letting uncertainty pass through his gate. He knew license plates by memory, recognized unit patches from a distance, and could spot a forged confidence faster than most men could read a badge. That was what made the moment so difficult for him. Commander Emily Carter did not look uncertain. She looked patient. She stood in front of the access counter as if the delay belonged to the gate, not to her. Her sealed mission folder stayed tucked under her arm. Her identification card waited beneath the scanner slot. The silver eagle shield badge near her heart held the morning light in a clean, quiet line. Nothing about her asked for permission, yet nothing about her pushed past procedure. That balance unsettled Lawson more than open defiance would have. He looked again at the outdated access sheet, then toward the inner road where the convoy remained stopped behind the barrier. Drivers watched from behind windshields. A communications specialist outside the operations building lifted a radio to his mouth, then lowered it when he saw nothing had changed. Private Daniel Ross stood inside the booth with his hand hovering near the scanner, caught between rank and instinct. "Sergeant," Ross said, "we have the name now. We should verify." Lawson turned just enough to make the younger guard straighten. "You verify when I tell you to verify." Ross stepped back, but his eyes returned to Emily. He had seen officers lose patience over far less. He had seen contractors waive papers, staff aides demand exceptions, and visiting officials raise their voices before the first question was finished. Emily had done none of that. She watched the base beyond the barrier with the stillness of someone already late for something important and disciplined enough not to waste seconds on anger. Lawson leaned closer to the window. "Commander Carter, if that is your correct name, you can wait in the visitor lane until operations sends a proper escort." Emily's eyes came back to him. "The briefing is waiting because I am not in the operations room." "The briefing is waiting for the mission commander." "Yes." The answer was so direct that one of the guards in the booth looked up fully. Lawson's mouth tightened. "Ma'am, people do not walk up alone to command-level access and expect a gate team to take their word for it." Emily nodded once. "They should not." For half a second, Lawson thought he had won the point. Then she added, "That is why the base has a system." The words struck cleanly, without insult, and that made them harder to dismiss. The radio came alive again, sharper this time. "Gate 1, this is operations. We show Commander Carter at your checkpoint. Confirm scan and release immediately." Ross looked at Lawson. The guard behind the monitor looked at Lawson. Even the driver in the nearest vehicle stopped pretending not to listen. Lawson felt the eyes gather around him and mistook them for a challenge. Pride moved faster than wisdom. "Negative," he said into the radio. "Identity not yet confirmed at gate level." A pause followed. Then operations answered, colder than before. "Then confirm it." Emily did not smile. She simply slid the card the final inch forward until it touched the scanner slot. Ross reached for it again, and this time Lawson did not stop him fast enough. The card clicked into place. The scanner light blinked once, then held steady, and the entire guard booth seemed to wait for the base itself to speak. The scanner light held steady for one long second, and in that second Sergeant Mark Lawson had just enough time to understand that the gate was no longer under the control of his assumptions. The small screen inside the booth went dark, refreshed, then shifted to a deep command green. Private Daniel Ross leaned closer, his face tightening as the first authorization layer appeared. Command access verified. Then the second, Operation Night Harbor. Then the third line, larger than the others, sharp enough to silence every breath inside the guard post. Mission Commander, Commander Emily Carter. The barrier arm did not lift immediately. The system waited for the confirmation tone, as if giving the men at Gate 1 one last moment to see what they had refused to read. Then the speaker above the counter clicked on, and a clear automated voice carried across the cold morning air. Mission Commander on site. Gate 1, priority clearance required. The words reached the convoy, the booth, the walkway, and the open lane beyond the fence. Engines kept humming, but everything human went still. Ross snapped upright, so quickly his chair rolled backward and bumped the wall. The second guard turned fully toward Emily, his expression emptied of doubt. Lawson stared at the screen, then at the identification card, then at the silver Eagle Shield badge on Emily's chest. The badge had not changed. It had not grown brighter because the system recognized it. It had simply become visible to the people who had needed a machine to tell them where to look. The radio crackled again, this time from operations. Gate 1, confirm immediate release of Mission Commander Carter. Operations room is standing by. Lawson reached for the radio, but his fingers paused before touching it. For the first time that morning, procedure did not protect his pride. It exposed it. Emily watched him without anger. That was worse than anger. Anger would have given him something to answer. Her calm gave him only the facts. Ross stepped forward and removed the card from the scanner with both hands, holding it carefully now, as if the plastic itself had become heavier. Commander Carter, he said, voice controlled but shaken, your access is verified. Emily accepted the card. Thank you, Private. The title landed gently, and Ross straightened even more. Lawson found his voice. Commander, I was following gate protocol. Emily placed the card back into her pocket and adjusted the sealed folder under her arm. Protocol asked you to verify, she said. Pride asked you to delay. No one in the booth moved. The barrier arm began to rise with a low mechanical hum, opening the lane into Fort Redstone. Beyond it, officers near the operations building had turned toward the gate. A staff vehicle started rolling forward from inside the fence, sent to meet her too late. Emily did not wait for it. She stepped past the access counter and walked through the gate with the same measured pace she had held while being questioned. The silver Eagle Shield badge caught the sunrise again, a small flash against her uniform, no longer decoration, no longer dismissed, but the quiet mark of the person the entire base had been waiting for. Emily Carter walked through Gate 1 without slowing, and the base seemed to rearrange itself around her arrival. The convoy that had been waiting near the inner lane rolled aside to clear the command route. A staff vehicle approached from the operations building, but Emily lifted one hand in a small signal and continued on foot, choosing speed over ceremony. Behind her, the barrier arm settled back into place, but the silence inside the guard booth remained open. Sergeant Mark Lawson stood at the counter with the radio in his hand, watching the woman he had delayed move toward the center of Fort Redstone as if she had always belonged there, because she had. Private Daniel Ross stayed at attention until Emily had passed the first security marker. Only then did he look at the screen again, where the green authorization panel still displayed her title. Mission Commander. The words had not faded, and neither had the damage they had done to Lawson's certainty. Inside the fence, officers stepped out of the operations walkway to meet Emily. A communications specialist handed her a tablet before anyone introduced themselves. She took it, scanned the updated movement schedule, and asked one quiet question. How many minutes behind? The specialist answered immediately. 9 minutes, ma'am. Emily nodded once. Then we recover 6 before the briefing and 3 before departure. There was no panic in her voice. No performance. Just command reduced to its cleanest form. See the delay, measure the loss, restore the rhythm. The soldiers around her moved because the order made sense before it sounded impressive. Lawson heard part of it through the open booth window, and the simplicity cut deeper than any reprimand. He had expected authority to announce itself. Emily practiced authority by making the room work better the moment she entered it. A black command vehicle stopped near the walkway, and Colonel James Whitaker stepped out in his dress uniform, white-haired, stern, and already looking toward Gate 1 before he looked at Emily. "Commander Carter," he said, crossing the pavement with measured urgency, "the operations room is ready." Emily gave him a brief nod. "Gate delay cost us 9 minutes. We can recover it." Whitaker's eyes moved past her to Lawson, who straightened so quickly his shoulders seemed to lock. The colonel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Sergeant Lawson." "Sir." "Was her card scanned on arrival?" Lawson swallowed. "Not immediately, sir." "Why not?" The question was plain. That made it inescapable. Lawson looked from Whitaker to Emily, then to the small silver eagle shield badge he had dismissed. "I relied on the printed list, sir." Whitaker held his gaze. "No, you relied on an assumption, then used the printed list to defend it." The words landed with military precision. Emily did not add to them. She simply adjusted the sealed mission folder under her arm and turned toward the operations building. Whitaker looked back to Lawson one final time. "Next time, trust the system before your pride edits the facts." Lawson answered, "Yes, sir," but his eyes followed Emily. She was already moving again, the badge near her heart catching the morning light as officers fell into step beside her. The base had stopped waiting. The mission commander had arrived, and everyone who mattered was now watching her lead. The operations building at Fort Redstone opened around Emily Carter like it had been holding its breath. Inside, the hallway was lined with unit boards, digital clocks, movement schedules, and personnel moving quickly without speaking louder than necessary. Colonel James Whitaker walked half a step behind her, not because he lacked authority, but because the room had already recognized whose timing mattered now. Officers who had been waiting near the briefing door straightened as Emily approached. Some knew her by assignment. Some knew only the title that had just flashed across the base system. All of them saw the same thing Lawson had missed at the gate. The calm was not hesitation. It was command under control. Emily entered the operations room at 0626, 9 minutes behind schedule and already working to erase the delay. A large wall display showed convoy positions, weather updates, communications windows, and a mission timeline marked in clean blocks of color. The center table was crowded with tablets, sealed packets, maps, and officers from logistics, medical support, aviation coordination, and communications. No one announced her with ceremony. The room simply adjusted. She placed the sealed folder on the table, opened it, and began. "We lost 9 minutes at Gate 1, she said. "We will not carry that mistake into the rest of the morning." Her voice was low, clear, and steady enough that every person in the room leaned toward the same rhythm. She pointed to the display. "Move convoy release to staggered intervals. Communications, compress the confirmation window by 2 minutes. Medical support, hold priority loading exactly as planned. Do not trade safety for speed. Logistics, confirm fuel status before the second lane opens." Orders moved across the table and became action almost instantly. Phones lifted. Tablets updated. A captain at the far end repeated the changes into a headset. The mission timeline shifted, then tightened, then turned green across 3 sections. Whitaker watched without interrupting. He had seen officers command by volume. He had seen others command by fear of failure. Emily commanded by removing confusion. Outside, at Gate 1, Lawson could hear fragments of the update through the radio channel. Timeline recovered by 6 minutes. Priority lanes confirmed. Mission commander has assumed control. Each phrase reached him like a quiet correction. He stood beside Ross while the younger private entered the delayed scan note into the gate log. Lawson looked at the log entry and felt the plainness of it. Delay caused by manual verification hold. No insult. No judgment. Just fact. Somehow, fact was heavier. Ross glanced at him, but said nothing. In the operations room, Emily finished the first briefing in less than 5 minutes. She did not mention Lawson. She did not turn the delay into an example. She only used the remaining time better than anyone else had used the first 9 minutes. When the final timeline block turned green, Colonel Whitaker looked at the room. "Proceed under Commander Carter's plan." Around the table, officers answered in sequence. Emily gathered the folder and looked once toward the gate's status feed on the side monitor. Gate 1 showed normal operations restored. For a brief second, her silver eagle shield badge reflected in the dark edge of the screen. Small, quiet, recognized now by the system, by the room, and by every person who had watched the mission begin the moment she was finally allowed through. Gate 1 returned to motion, but it did not return to the morning it had been. The convoy lanes moved cleanly now, the barrier arm lifting and lowering with disciplined rhythm, yet every guard in the booth felt the difference between procedure and assumption. Sergeant Mark Lawson stood at his station with the radio close enough to hear every update from the operations room. Each call carried Commander Emily Carter's authority in plain language. Timeline recovered by 6 minutes. Second lane confirmed. Priority sequence holding. Mission command has green status. Lawson had spent years believing respect began with control, but the woman he delayed had taken control of the entire mission without raising her voice at the men who had delayed her. That was the part that would not leave him alone. Private Daniel Ross completed the incident note, then looked toward the operations building through the glass. "She fixed the timeline," he said quietly. Lawson did not answer at first. Across the fence line, the first group of vehicles began to reposition under the updated plan. No one rushed. No one drifted. The movement had the clean order of someone thinking 3 steps ahead. Lawson watched the base respond to Emily's commands and understood that her badge had never needed to look impressive to be real. Inside the operations building, Emily stood at the wall display with Colonel James Whitaker and the command staff, reviewing the final synchronization check. Her sealed folder was open on the table now, its documents sorted into precise stacks. The silver eagle shield badge rested near her heart, small under the room lights, but no one in the operations room looked at it as decoration anymore. A communications officer reported, "Gate 1 status normal. Delay recorded. No remaining impact to mission timeline." Emily nodded. "Good. Keep the record factual." Whitaker glanced at her. "You are not going to request a formal correction?" "The correction already happened, sir. At the gate. In the system." Her answer was calm, but it carried more weight than a complaint. Whitaker understood. She did not need Lawson embarrassed in writing to prove command authority. The base system had named her. The mission had followed her. The rest was a lesson for anyone willing to learn it. Back at Gate 1, Lawson heard the next transmission. "Operations to all stations. Commander Carter's launch sequence is active. Maintain priority clearance." The words moved through the booth like a second verification. Ross straightened instinctively. Lawson looked at the scanner, then at the printed list still clipped to the counter. Yesterday's list. Incomplete. The sheet that had given his pride something official to hide behind. He unclipped it, folded it once, and placed it in the obsolete documents tray. Then he opened the live system roster and left it on the main screen where every guard could see it. Ross noticed the change. "Sergeant." Lawson kept his eyes on the screen. "From now on, we verify before we decide." It was not an apology yet, but it was the first honest thing he had said since Emily arrived. Inside Fort Redstone, the command route cleared as Emily stepped out of the operations building with Whitaker beside her. The morning sun was higher now, brighter against her uniform. She moved toward the departure lane, and this time, Gate 1 was already open before she reached it. Emily Carter reached the departure lane with Colonel James Whitaker at her side, and this time no one at Gate 1 waited for doubt to make the first move. The live system roster was open on the guard booth monitor. The barrier arm lifted before she stopped walking. Private Daniel Ross stood at attention beside the access counter, his posture sharp, his face respectful, his eyes fixed forward. Sergeant Mark Lawson stood beside him, no longer hiding behind the printed list that had failed him. The obsolete sheet was gone. In its place, the active command roster glowed on the screen, and Emily's authorization remained at the top under Operation Night Harbor. She noticed the change without commenting on it. That was part of what made Lawson feel the weight of it more clearly. She did not need to say, "Now you understand." The open gate said it for her. The convoy waited beyond the lane in perfect, staggered order, engines low, drivers focused, communications teams listening to the synchronized clock. Emily paused near the counter only because Lawson stepped forward. "Commander Carter," he said, voice steady but stripped of the hard edge it had carried earlier. Emily turned to him. The morning light reached across her shoulder, and touched the silver Eagle Shield badge, making the small emblem flash once against her uniform. Lawson looked at it, then looked her in the eyes. "I owe you an apology." Ross kept his face forward, but the whole booth seemed to hear the words. Emily did not rescue Lawson from the silence. She allowed him to stand inside it. "I delayed the mission because I judged the badge before I checked the system," Lawson continued. "I called it decorative. That was wrong." Whitaker remained quiet beside Emily, watching the exchange without softening it or sharpening it. This was not a reprimand now. It was a correction becoming permanent. Emily studied Lawson for a moment. "Security matters, Sergeant." "Yes, ma'am." "Verification matters." "Yes, ma'am." "But contempt is not procedure." The words were quiet, clear, and impossible to deflect. Lawson lowered his chin. "Understood, ma'am." Emily's expression remained composed, but not cold. "Guard the gate. Do not guard your pride." The sentence stayed in the air longer than any order on the radio. Lawson nodded once, and this time there was no performance in it. "It will not happen again." Emily accepted the answer with a small movement of her eyes, then turned toward the departure lane. Whitaker gave Lawson one last look, not angry, only measuring whether the lesson had taken root. Then he followed Emily. As she walked past the raised barrier, every guard at Gate 1 came to attention. Not because the system forced them to. Not because the colonel was watching. Because they had finally seen the person the badge had been pointing to all along. The first vehicle rolled forward under Emily's cleared route. The operations clock turned green. The mission moved. Lawson watched her pass through the gate he had once refused to open, and he understood that respect had not arrived with the siren, the screen, or the title. It had been standing in front of him from the beginning, calm enough to wait for truth and strong enough not to beg for it. By the time the last vehicle cleared the departure lane, the morning at Fort Redstone had changed shape. The same gates stood in the same place, the same barrier arm lowered after the convoy passed, and the same cold light stretched across the pavement. But Gate 1 no longer felt like a checkpoint built only from steel, glass, and procedure. It felt like a lesson that had been written in real time. Sergeant Mark Lawson remained at the counter after Commander Emily Carter disappeared down the command route, her silver Eagle Shield badge catching the last flash of sun before the distance swallowed it. The radio carried clean updates now. Launch sequence active. Convoy moving on schedule. Mission command green. No one in the booth spoke over those words. Private Daniel Ross watched the live roster on the monitor, then looked at Lawson without accusation. He did not need to say what both of them knew. The system had not changed. The badge had not changed. The woman had not changed. Only their understanding had finally caught up. Lawson opened the gate log and added a new standing note beneath the morning entry. All priority access will be verified through the live system before denial, delay, or manual hold. He read the sentence once, then again, because it sounded simple enough to be embarrassing. That was the thing about most mistakes built from pride. They looked complicated while they were happening and obvious after the truth arrived. Inside the operations building, Colonel James Whitaker stood beside Emily at the wall display as the first phase of Operation Night Harbor moved into its scheduled window. The timeline was green from end to end. Emily reviewed the final departure confirmation, then closed the sealed folder with the same quiet precision she had carried at the gate. Whitaker looked at her badge. "You handled Lawson with more patience than most commanders would have." Emily did not look away from the display. "He was guarding a gate, sir. He just forgot what he was supposed to guard it from." Whitaker allowed the faintest smile. "And what was that?" Emily turned her eyes toward the side monitor, where Gate 1 appeared in a small security feed, orderly again beneath the morning sun. Not people who looked different than he expected. The colonel said nothing for a moment, because the sentence did not need help. Back at Gate 1, Lawson stepped outside the booth as the next vehicle approached. He checked the live system first, then the identification card, then the driver's face. No shortcut, no assumption, no pride disguised as caution. Ross noticed and stood a little straighter. The change was small, but small things mattered when they stood at the beginning of larger consequences. Hours later, when the base returned to its normal rhythm, Lawson would still remember the exact sound of the automated voice saying Mission Commander on site. He would remember how the badge looked before and after recognition, identical in shape, but completely different in meaning. He would remember that Emily Carter never demanded respect at the gate. She let procedure reveal what prejudice had hidden, and he would remember her final instruction more clearly than any regulation pinned to the wall. Guard the gate. Do not guard your pride. The Silver Eagle Shield badge had crossed into Fort Redstone before sunrise as a small mark on a quiet woman's uniform. By the end of the morning, everyone at Gate 1 understood it had never been small. They had simply been standing too close to their own assumptions to see what it meant.